Guten Tag everyone, I'm really excited to show you how to make this sourdough bread. To me, this is probably the best sourdough bread there is. This is due to the slow and long fermentation process. After all, it's been around 150 hours to make this masterpiece. The process is actually quite simple, and I will show you exactly how to make this mind-blowing bread. The basis for this amazing bread is this, and this is something incredibly precious. This is slow fermented sourdough that I've been gathering in my fridge for weeks. Whenever you're feeding your sourdough, there is some sourdough that you don't have to use. And I like to put that sourdough into this jar. Now, some people are calling this a discard starter jar, but nope, that's the wrong word. This is flavor explosion. This contains so much incredible flavor. This is all the yeast and bacteria that has been working on this dough for weeks. So discard is really a bad word. It's slow fermented dough pretty much. And you will be surprised. This is going to make you a truly amazing bread. And it's actually my favorite bread. Now, let's get started. The question is, how much dough should you be making? And this really depends on your loaf pan. I have a smaller one right here. And I have a larger one. You want to be checking the description of your loaf pan manufacturer to know roughly how much dough you should make. You can also just figure this out a little bit by experimenting. I'll be sharing the links to the loaf pans in the description as well. Today, I'm gonna be using this large loaf pan. I really like it because it comes with a nice lid simulating a Dutch oven. But no worries, I got you covered. I'm gonna be showing you how to adjust this for the quantity that you need. I start by placing all my slow fermented sourdough in one pot. And the stingy German in me has to make sure that I use everything, every last little bit of sourdough. This is like diamonds, just with sourdough. Probably more awesome than diamonds. Is there food that you can eat with diamonds? I know some really fancy rich people like to eat some stuff covered in gold. But is there something like this with diamonds, I wonder? Great, so I now have 1 kilogram of that slow fermented sourdough. And this is then the following steps. Excuse my poor recipe writings. I'm really bad at editing videos. So, oh, and please ignore the salt part as well. I know you're looking at it. Okay, I hope this is better. So, we want to be adding around 200 grams of flour. That's 20% of 1 kilogram. 1.5 grams, 15 grams of salt, 1.5% of that, 100 grams seeds. This is optional, but I just like that extra flavor it gives. 10% of that, and another 10 grams of turmeric. I also really think that this is an amazing addition to this bread. It also really adds a nice visual effect to the final bread. 1% of that. Just gonna be mixing everything of this together right now, and you will be surprised how awesome this bread is going to be. So, one note here on the flour. I will show you the consistency that you want at the final bread. Now, this assumes that your sourdough is at 100% hydration, your slow fermented super sourdough. If it's a little bit less, you might have to adjust this. But please, every flour is unique, every flour is different. I don't know what you have inside of your slow fermented sourdough. It could be rye, it could be wheat, it could be any flour. So please pay attention to the final consistency we have after mixing everything together. I'm going to be using whole wheat flour, but this of course also depends on what you like. I just feel that the bran inside, look at this beautiful bran here on the flour. This bran just adds so much additional flavor, making this really my favorite bread. You could also be using bread flour. I would recommend you to use a flour that has a little bit of gluten, because we want this bread to also have a nice crumb. I really need to get myself some fine sea salt again. Okay, I need a break. This was already too much sport for me. I'm going to be adding a mixture of Leinsamen. Now you learned the German word. Flax seeds, I think, is the proper English name. So I'm going to be using 50 grams of those. And then I just like some sunflower seeds in there as well. But seriously, The limit is your own creativity. You can use any seeds that you like. If you like to use wheat or rye seeds, I recommend you that you maybe want to boil them, or in the end you might want to let this recipe, this dough, sit for another 24 hours inside of your fridge, just for everything to soak up that humidity, or you boil them in advance. But for those, you don't have to. Oh, sunflower seeds. Sonnenblumenkerne. Wow, so this actually turns out to German lesson here. Sonnenblumenkerne. Try saying that. And now the turmeric. This is gonna add incredible flavor and also really make the color of your bread very interesting. 10 grams or 1%. And now comes the part where we want to homogenize everything. We're not trying to create dough strength, so we just have to mix everything together. If you don't want to be using your hands, you could also definitely be using your stand mixer if you wanted to, but I'm just showing you how to do everything by hand. So just stir this until we have a nicely homogenized dough. Oh, and this is cold. And this is the dough. Just look at the consistency. If you don't get this consistency, just add more flour. So it holds together a little bit. There seems to be a little bit of gluten development. That's also because I was primarily using whole wheat for my starter in the past weeks. But yeah, this is the consistency that you want. You see, it's relatively stiff. It's not that highly hydrated. If my math is correct, it should be at around 70% hydration right now. I've been just testing a little bit. You see, this might actually even work for this loaf pan. This one might be a little bit too large, but then in the end it's going to rise a little bit, and I'm just worried that it might overflow. So yeah, this is always something that I struggle with a little bit. If you have some tips on how to better do this, please do let me know. But this one also, no. I'm gonna be going for the other loaf pan. So bye fancy one, but no worries, I will show you how to make amazing bread inside of this one as well. We need to start preparing our loaf pan, and you could be using olive oil, but I'm using a vegetable spray, and this one really does wonders. After a few uses, you don't have to use as much of this anymore. I'd say the number one reason people don't use loaf pans is that the bread in the end is going to stick. And this is probably also gonna cause some issues for you. Now, if you have tips on the loaf pan non-sticking, please also share them as a comment. You rock. What I like to do is I like to put some oats at the bottom. This also definitely helps with the sticking situation. And now I'm just being very... I have issues with movements, it seems. I'm not so good at this. So like this, a little bit. And then I'm just leaving all that shizzle here, all those oats at the bottom. They also help with the sticking situation. And now, normally for sourdough bread, you would be letting that bulk ferment now. But for this bread, no. This bread has already been fermenting for so long. What do you want? Do you want it to ferment even longer? Nope. This is actually ready to be baked right now. However, when kneading, we removed all that gas from the dough pretty much. Well, not all, but pretty much everything. So we will let this come to room temperature already inside of our loaf pan or loaf tin. I never know what to say. Magic, right? This is so easy, so much easier than a regular bread. We don't even need to do any fancy shaping here. It's gonna recover its shape. So how does that sound? Amazing bread like this with so little work? Okay, I'm gonna be doing a little bit of mini shaping on this anyways. For this, I'm just gonna be placing this on my counter. All I'm doing is I'm gently rolling the dough over the surface, and I'm not using any flour for this. I'm using the tension of the surface to my advantage. And now I'm just rounding up the surface a little bit. What helps is also a little bit of an extra rub with some water, because we are gonna do one more amazing thing. So after you're done giving your dough a good massage with some water, that's it. That's all the shaping we're gonna do. Crazy, right? I'm gonna just take this and gently, very gently, lift this into my loaf pan tin, or loaf, loaf. There you go. Now looking at the dough, it might have been a little bit too much, but we will see about it. This is something I never really know how to calculate. We wetted this a little bit, and this gives us room to add some more nice oats here on top. I love those oats. They just give it such an amazing rustic appearance and excellent taste. And now, since we don't have the other loaf pan with a nice lid, I'm going to show you a neat little hack that we will also be using for baking. Just get a second loaf pan, which is similar, and then just put this on top, and this is gonna simulate your Dutch oven. Wow, isn't this amazing? No need to cover it or anything. Ugh, me failing here right on camera. Just put that to the side, and then we're gonna wait until the dough has increased in size a little bit. I will show you the final consistency using the finger poke test. Wait, you want to see this now? You see, it almost instantly recovers. So we gotta be waiting just a little bit more. I'd say around maybe 2 or 3 hours. Just leave it like this, and this is gonna make you really mind-blowing. And the dough. It's been roughly 5 hours, and look at this dough. It increased nicely in size. Just gonna poke the dough a little bit. The dent recovers way slower. It's a little bit hard to see with the oats. I guess you could wait even a little bit longer, but the problem is then it's just going to overflow this loaf pan. So I might have used a little bit too much dough for this one, but it would have been too little for the other one. Yeah, so loaf pan tin, this is something you need to practice. And now we are going to be baking this one. And no worries, you don't need the second loaf pan. I will show you another amazing way how you could bake that without the second one. I'm just preheating my oven now to the actual baking temperature. That's 230 degrees Celsius. And for you Americans, Fahrenheit right here. Roughly 15 minutes, my oven is going to be preheated, and then it's baking time. And just the scent of this bread, it's already so good. I wish you could smell this. I'm very excited to show you the final product because this is my favorite bread. Oven has been preheated, and now this is going into the oven. And the question is, when is this done? And the best thing to use is a thermometer. It is done the moment the center reaches 95 degrees Celsius. And how long this takes, this really depends on your oven, on your setup, so many factors. You want to remove the source of steam. In this case, that's going to be my lid. The moment the bread reaches around 80 degrees Celsius, or else it's going to get too dark at the top. And then for the last 15 degrees, you're pretty much just baking it without a lid, without a steam, to get a little bit of color on the top. I guess this is going to take around 30 minutes with steam, and then another 20 minutes or so without steam. But the most reliable way is really to use a thermometer. I'm going to give the bread a good spritz with water just to give it a little bit more steam at the start. For the second loaf pan, I'm also giving this a spritz with some water. If you don't have a second loaf pan, no worries. I'll be showing you right now how to bake without the second loaf pan. This is how I am baking. Now, if you don't have the second loaf pan, you want to have a bowl here at the bottom, something heat resistant, and that one you want to pour boiling water. This is going to create a lot of steam. And then you want to have another tray here, pretty much there, on top of your bread, and then all the steam is going to be trapped below. You're pretty much baking it with indirect heat, more or less then. And this is the best way how to bake a bread like that. But if you have a second tray, then this makes it a little bit easier. So I'm changing it to bottom and top heat. I'm not using the fan. I don't want to blow away that steam. And then temperature is 230 degrees Celsius. I'm going to be checking on this bread in around 25 minutes to check the internal temperature and see where it's at. Around 25 minutes passed, and let's check what's hiding below. Look at this incredible oven spring. Wow, this is really good. So I'm gonna be checking the temperature, and the moment it's around 80 degrees Celsius, I will remove the top lid. And you see, it's still around 56. No, just 50, even less. So this is definitely not done yet. And if I were to remove the lid, the steam now, then it would dry out way too much. So also one of the issues I have when baking with a loaf pan, but this thermometer, it's here for the rescue. I would have removed it and it would have been not completely done. So yeah, actually you see 47. So lid back on and then bake for some more. Oh, I'm also just gonna give this another spritz of water, just because I don't want those oats to get too dark. Let's check in another 20 minutes maybe. Okie dokes, another 20 minutes later. And we are now at 80 degrees Celsius. This needs another 10 degrees, a little bit less to finish. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this out of the loaf pan, and then I will finish baking this until this has the 95 degrees Celsius. And hopefully this comes out. The moment of truth, always the scary moment when baking with a loaf pan. And nice, it does. That's the vegetable oil that we use. Back to the oven. And the final bread. Look at it. We even have a little bit of crust development. That's why you have to remove the steam. This is essential. Let's just check the temperature one more time. It's gonna peak up to, I think, 95 or maybe even a little bit more, 95 Celsius. This is definitely done. Now, the sad thing about this bread is you want to eat this because the scent, I wish you could just smell what I'm smelling right now. It's just incredible. But because it's a loaf pan bread, it needs more time to cool down. So this should cool down for at least 2 hours before you take a slice. Unfortunately, for me, it's already relatively late, so I can't take a slice today. I'm gonna take a slice tomorrow. The crust won't be as good anymore. I think after 2 hours, the crust is best, but still. So I'm gonna put this on a cooling rack, and then this is gonna sit there until tomorrow morning. And then let's take a slice ready for breakfast. Bye-bye. Let's have a look at the crumb. So the crumb is relatively dense, but that's normal for this kind of bread. This bread really shines in terms of flavor. I wish you could smell this. This is just so much incredible aroma in this bread. The wild yeast truly did an amazing job on this one. Let's give this a shot. This is so good. Just from a flavor perspective, I think this definitely is my favorite sourdough. All that slow fermentation just created so much incredible taste, and this is what really makes this bread so amazing. And I don't think this is something you can buy in a bakery because they would never wait this long. It's just too expensive. But at home, this is just a byproduct that you have of your regular sourdough making, and for that, seriously, in terms of taste, this beats any other sourdough. I also love the yellowish color the turmeric adds. You can leave the turmeric away, I think, but definitely just the look of this, and you have the slight turmeric taste, not too much. It really makes this truly amazing. Okay, now for the question, how sour is this really? I got me this new pH meter, and I just want to test and see. And surprising, it's not that sour. You see, even on checking my other breads, very, very interesting. This is definitely not as sour as the other breads that I'm making. Just to show you in comparison, this is a bread that I also made today. You see that? This one is even more sour than this one. So this is another point for this bread. I think this just balances out all the different complex flavors a sourdough bread can have, and it's just really amazing in terms of taste. Yeah, and this one even has a stronger tang to it. So don't be scared of your sourdough starter. This is a true masterpiece. As always, happy baking and may the gluten be with you.